I'm here at St. Stephen's Catholic Church in Portland, Oregon, and today is the first day in our Novena to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus. Now, this year we are going to focus on the writings of Dietrich von Hildebrand and his book, The Sacred Heart, published also as The Heart. And I'm not going to read you the book, but I'm going to summarize it. Now let's see here. We begin then, the way that von Hildebrand generally writes his books is that he begins with a philosophical look at something, and then the second half of the book will be a theological look at the same thing. So we begin here with the heart, and then the book ends with a section on the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So let's begin then with a little philosophy. So we begin with chapter 1, which is entitled The Role of the Heart. Now we talk about then the affective sphere. And you remember I mentioned in the trailer for this novena that we have the intellect, which is our mind, and we have the affect, which is our heart. So the affective sphere and the heart as its center have been more or less under a cloud throughout the entire course of the history of philosophy. It has had a role in poetry, in literature, in the private prayers of great souls, and above all in the Old Testament, in the Gospel, and in the liturgy, but not in the area of philosophy proper. In philosophy, it has been treated like the proverbial stepson. This stepson status not only refers to the fact that no place has been allotted to the exploration of the heart, but it also applies to the interpretation given the heart whenever it was dealt with. Now, this affective sphere, and with it the heart, has then been excluded from the spiritual realm. It is true that we find in Plato's Phaedrus the words, "The madness of love is the greatest of heaven's blessings." But when it comes to a systematic classification of man's capacities, as in the Republic, Plato did not grant the heart a rank comparable to that of the intellect. All right, well, so we've looked at Plato, now we'll look at Aristotle. Aristotle's position was that the intellect and the will belong to the rational part of man, and the affective realm, and with it the heart, belong to the irrational part in man, that is, to the experience, or to the area of experience, which man allegedly shares with the animals. So animals have what are called a sensitive soul, whereas man has a rational or intellectual soul. Vegetables or plants have what is called a vegetative soul. So the difference there is that a vegetable grows, and when the vegetative soul dies, the geranium dies. The animal has a sensitive soul, so it has the use of the senses. It can smell, it can taste, it can touch, it can hear. What else do we have? Eyes, ears, nose, mouth. It can speak. And it can taste, whereas man has an intellectual or rational soul. So we can think independently of things that we see, touch, taste, or hear. So the idea here is that Aristotle's position was that the affective realm, and with it the heart, belong to the irrational part in man, like the animals have. So feelings would be something that an animal would have. Now, it is true that there is one great tradition in the stream of Christian philosophy in which full justice is done in a concrete way to the affective sphere and to the heart. And this is St. Augustine's work from the Confessions and onward. And these are pervaded by deep and admirable insights concerning the heart and the affective attitudes of man. So if you've read the Confessions of St. Augustine, you know he speaks about he speaks very much about the affective sphere. He's an intellectual man, but he is also wrestling with his heart, with his feelings and such. Now, St. Augustine says, "Our doctrine inquires not so much whether one be angry, but wherefore, and why he is sad, and not whether he is sad, and so of fear." So the idea here is that our feelings, our emotions, our affectivity, they need what is called an object. So enthusiasm, joy, sorrow don't have a meaning in themselves separately from what we are to be joyful about, or what we are sorrowful about, or what we are enthusiastic about. If we're just talking about enthusiasm, but there's nothing that you're enthusiastic in particular about, well, then that enthusiasm doesn't really mean a whole lot. So it is with joy or sorrow or fear. So we must have an object for our affectivity. So von Hildebrand continues, from the philosophical point of view, there is no excuse for discrediting the affective sphere and the heart merely because these are exposed to so many perversions and deviations. To see the role and rank of the heart and of the affective sphere in its highest manifestations, we have to look at man's life, at his quest for earthly happiness, at his religious life, at the lives of the saints, at the gospel, and the liturgy. Can anyone doubt that the deepest source of earthly happiness is the authentic, deep mutual love between persons, be it conjugal love or friendship? And when we read the writings of St. Francis of Assisi or study his life, the role of contrition, of holy joy, of his being moved to the deepest stratum of his soul by God's bounty and by the passion of Christ, of his ardent love of Christ and of his love of neighbor, his tender love even extended to animals, these cannot escape us. Von Hildebrand continues, granted that supernatural affectivity, so now we're looking at supernatural affectivity. We are looking at natural affectivity when it comes to philosophy, and supernatural affectivity when it comes to theologizing or philosophy entering into the Christian sphere. So granted now that supernatural affectivity differs from and surpasses natural affectivity, that it has an incomparable purity of motivation, and granted that a part of natural affectivity has to be silenced in order to make room for supernatural affectivity, it is still impossible to deny the affective character of these supernatural responses. Now, the difference in question is analogous to the one between sapientia infusa, or infused wisdom, and natural wisdom. Much as one may stress the difference between these, it would be nonsense to say that supernatural wisdom is no longer wisdom. The difference between supernatural and natural goes through all three spheres: the cognitive, the volitional, and the affective. So the cognitive, our cognition, our thinking of things, the volitional, which is our will, and the affective, which is our heart. So we have the supernatural and the natural in all three of these: the cognitive, the volitional or willful, and the affective. And however much the supernatural may act in all three spheres, neither the cognitive, volitional, nor the affective experience loses its specific character through its supernatural elevation. And we'll stop there. That's a little summary of quotes from chapter 1. Now you might be thinking, well, Father, I don't understand what you're talking about. Well, you have to wait. You have to listen to chapter 2, and then chapter 3, and chapter 4, and so on. And as we go along, then we layer and layer, and we layer and we layer, and we get to know a little more about what von Hildebrand is talking about as he leads us to move into the realm of the Sacred Heart. So we begin with the human heart, then we go to the Sacred Heart. And that is our consideration for day 1 of this novena. Now, we're going to pray the novena prayer, and you can find a link to the novena prayer in the description below the video. Now I'm going to ask you to click on the link below for the video in which we will pray together each day the novena for the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We'll go into the church for that. And I will see you tomorrow for day 2 in our novena to the Sacred Heart. And don't miss a day of prayer with us. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.